It is now my honor and privilege to introduce the recipient of this year's Dwight D. Eisenhower Award, the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Robert J. Papp, Jr. The Admiral hails from Norwich, Connecticut, just a few miles up the road from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. This guy actually graduated from the academy of the service that he went into, apparently, where he would graduate from in 1975. He also holds 2 master's degrees, one of them from the Naval War College. He assumed the duties of the 24th Commandant of the United States Coast Guard in May 2010. He also commanded Coast Guard Atlantic and the Great Lakes northern border. He was Task Force Commander of the Operation Able Manor in 1994 to halt the mass illegal immigration of Haitians to the United States and supported Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti later that year. Plus, he has served on 6 Coast Guard cutters and commanded 4 of them, to include the magnificent 3-mast sailing the Eagle, bark the Eagle. The Admiral leads our nation's 5th military service with almost 90,000 active duty Coast Guard men and women, reservists, civilians, and volunteer auxiliary. The Coast Guard is the largest component within the Department of Homeland Security. It blends with military requirements, law enforcement, and border security with humanitarian search and rescue and natural disaster assistance. The Admiral is ultimately responsible for the safety and security of America's oceans, lakes, rivers, and ports. He does so in an era that requires doing the same or more with fewer resources because of the sequestration, hiring freezes, and civilian furloughs. He also does so fully knowing that there will be no reduction in demand on the services provided by the United States Coast Guard, to include possibly adding the Arctic to his area of responsibility and all counter-narcotic operations. In the Washington Post interview last year, the Admiral said the Coast Guard is going to be limited in 3 years of obscurity and will have to make more judgment calls, but people are his most important resource. He said the Coast Guard has a culture of doing more with less. He called it a great strength, but also a great weakness, because it ends up wearing our people, ships, and aircraft. The Eisenhower Award is named after our 34th president, who along with 7 other U.S. presidents proudly called themselves members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. It has been presented annually since 1970 to one individual for his or her contributions to the American security, unity, and world peace. Comrades, sisters, and distinguished guests, please welcome the recipient of this year's Dwight D. Eisenhower Award, the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Bob Papp. Admiral, congratulations.
Dwight D. Eisenhower Distinguished Service Award, Gold Medal and Citation presented to Admiral Robert J. Papp, Jr., Commandant, United States Coast Guard, in special recognition and sincere appreciation of his leadership and commitment to the safety and security of the United States of America as Commandant of our nation's 5th military service. He must ensure the Coast Guard meets and exceeds its military, law enforcement, and border security requirements, as well as continues to provide humanitarian search and rescue and natural disaster assistance. His dedication to mission accomplishment and to those who carry out his orders is true to the ideals, traditions, and values of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands in the official seal of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States this 22nd day of July, 2013, approved by the National Council of Administration, signed by John E. Hamilton, Commander-in-Chief, Alan Gunner Kent, the Adjutant General.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am tremendously humbled, but also very proud to accept this award this morning on behalf of all the men and women of the United States Coast Guard who have been serving this country, both at home and abroad, for over 223 years. I know my father who was a Marine veteran who served in Korea during the winter of 1951 to 1952, and my grandfather, who was a career Coast Guardsman who served in multiple convoy escorts in the North Atlantic during World War II, would be very, very proud today. But I can't help but feeling, much like I did during an incident about 10 years ago. I was the brand new district commander of the 9th Coast Guard District up in the Great Lakes region, and I was out on a trip visiting my units. My Master Chief and I stopped in a rest stop on the Ohio Turnpike. And I was waiting for the Master Chief. I looked across the food court, and there I saw it. I knew it was coming. There was an older gentleman with a young child, looked like his grandson, and he had the look. You all understand the look. I knew he was going to make a beeline across the food court and over to me. And as he approached me, and I'm standing there in my uniform, he stuck out his hand and he said, "Thank you for your service." So I, of course, thanked him, and I told him it was a privilege to serve, but I also wanted to check it. So I said, "You know I'm not in the Air Force, right?" And he became indignant. He said, "Of course I know." He says, "I'm a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer, and I recognize the Coast Guard uniform, and I know all those things that you have done in the past and that your service is doing now." So I don't know how many of you have had that same or similar experience, but it's always nice to get that appreciation. So on behalf of all the Coast Guard men and women, I'd like to thank you for this wonderful award and for all the terrific work that the Veterans of Foreign Wars does in caring and advocating for our Americans' veterans. Special thanks to your Commander-in-Chief, John Hamilton. This is a tremendous privilege. And I heard that membership thing, so one of the things that I have to do today is submit my membership. In fact, I have my check right here. But it goes to the Virginia State Commander, Margot Sheridan, also a member of the Coast Guard, who helped to recruit me. So there's really no higher calling in the work that you've done caring for our nation's veterans, but I sometimes fear that many of our country have lost that personal connection with what it means to be a veteran and what it means to leave loved ones behind when you answer the nation's call. Most of you can appreciate this. If you look back almost 70 years ago to the end of World War II, we had about 130 million people in our country, with almost 16 million people in uniform. Today, we have over 300 million people in the United States, but only about 2 million in uniform. So let me put it in a different way. At the end of World War II, if you walked into a neighborhood and started knocking on doors, on every 8th door, you would find a family with a member in the armed services. If you do the same thing today, you'd have to walk to 150 doors before you come to a home that has a service member. That makes the work you do even more important. And to express my appreciation to you, I have done something that was long overdue, and that's that membership. But just 2 months ago, I had the honor of presiding at a rededication of the Coast Guard War Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery, which honors the members of the Coast Guard who gave their lives fighting in the First World War. Now, decades of weather had deteriorated the monument, but our Chief Petty Officers Association took it upon themselves to restore the monument to the beauty it had when it was first commissioned 85 years ago to honor the sacrifice of our Coast Guardsmen who've gone before. And this memorial honors the crew members of the Tampa, a Coast Guard cutter that did 18 combat patrols escorting 350 ships during World War I, but was torpedoed by a German submarine and sunk with the loss of all hands, 111 Coast Guardsmen. Last month, the Coast Guard said farewell to one of our iconic figures, Commander Ray Evans, who served in World War II. Now, a couple of the names I'm going to mention you might have heard. Ray Evans, during the Battle of Guadalcanal, was a signalman first class. He went in a Higgins boat to go into the beach to recover some of Chesty Puller's Marines who had become surrounded on the beach by the Japanese. His Higgins boat was providing cover fire so the Marines could get off the beach, when his boat coxswain was shot and mortally wounded. That boat coxswain was Samuel B. Roberts, the same Samuel B. Roberts that the Navy has named 3 ships after over the years. Ray Evans got Samuel B. Roberts back to the ship, but then he volunteered to go in again. He got in another Higgins boat with his friend, a fellow Coast Guardsman, Douglas Monroe, and they once again went in to provide covering fire for the Marines coming off the beach. Douglas Monroe was killed that day while covering for the Marines and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Ray Evans was awarded the Navy Cross and meritoriously promoted to Chief Petty Officer by Admiral Bull Halsey. And I've had the pleasure over the last few years of calling Ray on his birthday and had a chance to visit his widow in Seattle just a couple months ago. I spent an awful lot of time indoors in my job, so when we had a new group of admirals this year, I took them out to Arlington Cemetery to see the memorial, but also to introduce them to some of our other Coast Guard heroes. One of those was the grave of Lieutenant Jack Rittger. Jack Rittger was one of our Coast Guard helicopter pilots serving with the Air Force during the Vietnam War. Within a month of arriving in Vietnam, he had won 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses for his rescue of downed aviators. In his case, with the missions he was flying, he deserved every medal he got. The rescues were all in combat conditions under enemy fire, and then sadly, after only 2 months of being in Vietnam, he was called for what would be his last rescue mission. A Marine Corps fighter pilot had been down in his aircraft near a North Vietnamese camp. He suffered a broken arm and leg during his ejection, and he was used by the North Vietnamese as bait to draw in the rescue forces. The first helicopter on scene made numerous attempts before being driven off by enemy fire and low fuel. Despite the continual enemy fire, Rittger said he was willing to make an attempt. However, as he settled down near the downed aviator, enemy rounds hit the helicopter, it caught fire and crashed, killing all 4 on board. Before going to Vietnam, Lieutenant Rittger's brother asked him why he was volunteering for duty that so many others were seeking to avoid. He told his brother, quote, "This is what I do. This is who I am. I'm an air rescue pilot, and I've got an obligation to save them." That spirit still exists in the men and women of the Coast Guard that I'm so privileged to lead. Just from these few examples, you can see the great work of our Coast Guard fighting for our nation overseas, and it continues to this day. We currently have 1,700 of our members deployed outside the United States in over 30 different countries and territories, including Afghanistan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. This past Thanksgiving, and again this coming Thanksgiving, I will spend it with our patrol boat squadron in Bahrain, men and women who are stationed in the Middle East providing security for the waters in the northern Arabian Gulf. This work is not without peril, and these men and women are never far from my thoughts. And I was reminded of them and the dangerous work they do last February when I presided over the dedication of Bruckenthal Hall, named in honor of Damage Controlman 3rd Class Nathan Bruckenthal. Petty Officer Bruckenthal was killed by a terrorist bomber in 2004 while serving his second tour in the Arabian Gulf as a member of a joint Coast Guard-Navy boarding team. I really love being able to recognize our Coast Guard men and women for the great work they do, just like I have the opportunity this morning to accept this award on their behalf and tell you about other Coast Guard men and women, both past and present, and their service to our great nation. It makes me also think once again about that gentleman at that rest stop in the Ohio Turnpike, because over the thousands of people that have reached out their hand to thank me for my service, it seems to be happening less nowadays. That's why we need people like you to remind our citizens of the service and sacrifice of those people who step forward to wear the uniforms. But it also made me think about the summer of 1970 when I entered the Coast Guard Academy. Those of you who have served in Vietnam will remember it was a very different time then. If you were standing at a rest stop on the Ohio Turnpike in uniform back then, you were likely to have a very different experience than the one I had, or that many men and women in uniform have today. I understand that fully, and I think that every time someone approaches me and they say, "Thank you for your service," as people still do, I tell them it's my privilege to serve, but I also tell them I'm going to pass it along to the folks who really get the job done. And that's what I do when I talk to my Coast Guard men and women. I pass it on to those young men and women, but that's why it's a great opportunity for me to come here today and pass it on to all of you as well. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And thank you once again for this great honor and privilege of being here today and for this very prestigious award. Thanks.